Okay. Can you see this? Hopefully you can. This is our website. And so like you can see, everything is as it was before the switch, before and after, all the same on the front end. And what you're going to do when you want to log into the website is exactly the same as you did on the old website. You're going to click this little person here and log in. There is an extra step for the moment. I'm working to get this fixed, but this should take you directly to single sign-on, and it's not working. So just click log in again. Oops, and I'm already logged in. So normally you would have to type in your username and password, and you're now logged into the site. Another issue that several people have complained about this week is the fact that if you start on a certain page in Drupal 7, it would take you back to that page. It's not doing that. It's taking you to the home page. So that's another bug we're trying to figure out in login to get you back to where you started. Because usually that's what I tell people. Go to the page you want to edit and log in from there, unless you just want to stay logged in all the time. So you will notice that you are logged into Drupal by the toolbar. And you'll notice it looks a little updated, kind of looks a little bit nicer. Your mileage may vary. It may have some of these options or all of these options, but I didn't sign in as an admin, but as the marketing editor specifically, so you didn't see. I have like 100 more options up here. And so I'm trying not to confuse you by showing you too much, but really all you're going to be doing is working on your content for the most part. So you can just ignore the second part of the toolbar, but know that when you see this stuff up here, that means you are logged in to the website. And before I get too far, I do want to mention, so if you click your name up here, and this is me, marketing editor, this is where you would go to edit your profile. So I know some people don't have anything. This is your directory profile. So if you do a directory search, and I know it's broken right now, so you guys, trust me, I know. But normally, if you search for someone's name, you'll get the basic profile information about them, but you can also add a lot more information. And this is really designed more for faculty, but staff also have all these options where you can add a lot of information about yourself that will appear alongside your directory profile. Just click on your name or picture and it will take you basically to your page that represents who you are. And it could have your CV, it could have where you were educated, it could have a short bio, any of that stuff. But here's where you would go to edit that. So just know, I know up here used to be Workbench, and a lot of people would, that's how they would get to that, but you now do it by clicking on your name. So for the purposes of this training, I have been using the alumni website as an example. And so the first thing I want to do is to kind of show you what it looks like to go in to edit view on an existing page so that you can see how all of these things sort of fit together and how it's different than Drupal 7. And then we'll actually not go all the way, but we'll build out this page again from scratch so you can see what it's like to actually have to go and do all of these things. And hopefully that will give you kind of enough information to be, like I said, maybe not necessarily fluent, but you're going to feel a lot more comfortable going in and doing it. And like I said, it really just takes a few hours, a couple of days, and it should feel just as easy to you as it was working in Drupal 7. So I have gone to my alumni page, and my marketing editor role has been assigned to this page, so I can edit it. So I can, again, another difference I will notice when I'm logged in. If I'm not logged in, I won't see this, but when I'm logged in, these are my buttons to get to functions. And most typically that's going to be edit. So you may or may not have all of these depending on whether you're an admin in the groups you belong to or whether you're just a simple editor. But you should at least have view, which shows you the current page, edit, which allows you to create a new draft of that page, or edit the content on that page and publish it immediately, or revisions, which actually works just like it did in Drupal 7, where you can actually restore old versions of the page or look at old versions of the page if you wanted to grab, a paragraph you removed 6 months ago or something like that. So let's click edit and see what's what. So when I click edit, I am now in the back end of Drupal, and I'm able to make changes to my page. And you'll notice up here, this is not totally unfamiliar based on what Drupal 7 was like. You've got your title. You don't have your big WYSIWYG up here, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Images and attachments. So A lot of our home pages have kind of the big horizontal hero image up at the top, and that's where this would go. If you click add media, it will take you to the media library, and you're able to access photos that you already have in your library, or you're able to upload new ones from your computer. So this is where you would add. This page doesn't have a hero image, shockingly. It's kind of a landing page, but it doesn't have that. But this is where you would add it. And then finally, for what is essentially a landing page, which represents a group. Groups have contact information. And so any child pages that belong to this group will have this contact information alongside it. So this is all the stuff that appears in your sidebar: your name, your email, your phone number, your mailbox, building location, detail, office hours, additional notes, which you can actually use free HTML in this, and you actually have to do like line breaks and stuff like that. And then all of the social media that's associated with that page. So that all is there. That's the top section. Now here's where things start to get a little different. So as I mentioned before, unlike Drupal 7, where you put everything into a single window, what Drupal 8 does, and this is not by default, we actually added this content layout engine to Drupal as an add-on, is because this will give you a lot more control for how your page looks, but it's different. So unlike D7, where you put everything in that box, the way D8's layout works is that you have to start thinking about pages, if we go back to the published page for a minute, as kind of blocks or bricks or regions or whatever you want to call them, kind of stacked on top of each other. I like to think of them as blocks. And if you've used the Gutenberg editor in WordPress, it's not very popular. Everyone hates it. But it's the same kind of concept, is that when you're laying out your page, you have to be very deliberate about the way that you want to lay out your page. But once you kind of know how it's going to look, then you can easily build it, and then you can easily make changes to it. So if you decide, I don't want 3 columns here, I want kind of one big wide region, you can immediately go in and change those things. So you're not writing anything in stone when you build this. But you have to start thinking about your page again, like these blocks stacked on top of each other. Here's an aside at the top with a video. There's another aside that doesn't have a video or an image right below it. They basically just decided they wanted a content section that had that nice little colored background. Then you have a heading, 3 columns of content, each with an image and a little text region underneath it. Another heading, 2 columns, again, both with photographs and some text underneath it. Another heading, 3 columns with text and no image. And then finally, another aside. And you'll see how this is all relevant when we go back into edit view. So if I start scrolling down here, I see this is content. And as I mouse over these regions, I start to see kind of the basic building block of Drupal layouts. And that is, it's twofold. Again, it will seem a little weird at first, but once you grasp it, it's a no-brainer. So essentially, to build each kind of block, there are 2 things. There's one thing that's on the outside, that's the section. So again, you might have a full width section, and that's above 3 columns, and that's above another full width section. So that's what this is. This, as we mouse over it, there is a container. So to build, so for example, this first thing is an aside. I have to build a container, and then I have to build, and trust me, building is not hard. I have to put something in the container. And in this case, it's an aside with a little bit of text and a video. And that's what these things represent. And so what does this do in essence? So again, the first thing is I tell Drupal I want a section. And then I have to tell it what kind of section I want. Most of the time, it probably is going to be a full width section. That's kind of just, it takes up all the available content space. That's where you put stuff. But again, there are going to be times when you want 3 columns. And you might want 3 columns in different configurations. So again, this is what we would do in Drupal 7 with the div, right? You would go into div and you had all these different options for how you wanted things done. And so in essence, you have the ability to do 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, and 4 columns, and they're in different configurations. Now, I've asked our engineering team to help me conceive of better names than this, but the best way I can describe the 336, the 363, is that we use the foundation framework for our website, our basic kind of templates. And this is nothing anybody who's not a nerd does not need to know. But basically what it does is it divides your page into 12 invisible columns that represent the page at whatever width it is. And so you can see all of these numbers add up to 12. So 444 means 3 equal columns. 363 is 3 columns, but the middle column is bigger, twice as big, in fact, as the other 2. Or 336 is 2 smaller columns and then 1 twice as big. So you can kind of follow the logic there. Again, I would love for these images to actually be representative of what you're choosing and to choose some friendly names. So we'll get that, but that's for a kind of a bug fix here in the next few weeks. So that's the first thing you do. Tell Drupal what you want to put there. And then the second thing is, what do I want to put in there? And so this is where I add all my different types of content. Again, you no longer have to go to a separate place to build your accordion, to build your tabs. You build your container, again, 2 clicks. I want a container and I want it to look like this. And then the second step is, what do I want to put in the container? Is it an aside? Is it text? That's probably the choice you're going to make 95% of the time. Or is it some of these other things? And we'll talk about all those things over the course of this training. So as we start to go down the page, again, we see that each one of these things is basically a separate container. It's a separate section. So that was one section. You see 2 pluses, one for the section and one for the intersection. And then you'll also notice some other things about the container, or it's actually in both the container and the content type, which are these little controls. So one of the great things that Drupal 8 layouts lets us do is to drag and drop. So if I wanted this section to be above this section, I can do it 2 ways. I could actually grab the little hamburger icon here and drag it to where I want it, or I can use the arrows to actually bump it. So I could just bump this content above the other content. And likewise, I can bump it down. And of course, it's not going to do that. I'm messing things all up here. There we go. And then over here, this is where you go to edit, and that's where you go to delete. So if I wanted to edit this aside, I just click the pencil icon. And now this will look very familiar to you, right? This is what you're used to in Drupal 7. An aside has a title. You tell the aside whether you want it, or Drupal, whether you want the aside to be full width or whether you want it to float off to the right. And then there's your content. So this content editor should look very familiar to you. And then there's the link to the YouTube video, and there's the image that's associated with it. And you can not only edit the content itself, but if you just all of a sudden decided you wanted to change the container, just click the outer pencil, and now you can change the container itself. I don't do that very often, but just know that you can. And so let's just kind of take a look at a couple of those. So here's another aside. Remember, this aside has literally nothing in it except for the content. There's no video, and there's no image. If we go down to the next section, so this is a 3 equal column section, and it has 3 images in it. And then also the 3 text regions. Now, again, in Drupal 7, you would do this with a div, and you would see your kind of little dotted outline, and you'd place your image in there, and then you could actually click return and just start typing your text in here. One of the things that I'm alluding to when I use a word like cumbersome is at first you're going to be like, really, this is what I have to do? I have to say I want 3 columns, and then I have to put the image in there, and I have to put the text in, but it's actually separate. It's not image, it's content. I can't just, yes, it is different, but it will ultimately allow you more flexibility. So let's say you had this design, and then all of a sudden you're like, no, I really want to have the text above the images. Instead of having to create a new div and figure out how to do that, you can literally just move content like that. And so it's really cool to be able to do that. And basically all of these things, although they're all tied to this page, kind of live separately. So they all get brought together when we save a draft or publish. But because they are sort of live separately within the system, you're able to manipulate each one of those things individually. Whereas before, you would just be doing it in that one WYSIWYG box, trying to figure out how the heck you're going to do it. And one thing that's really cool also about the drag and drop ability is that you're actually able to disable items. So let's say I have this aside down here, but it's only relevant for 2 months out of the year. But I've got it designed just like I wanted. I got the image I wanted. I got the copy that I wanted. Let's say this. So this is the alumni homepage. Maybe it's homecoming, right? Homecoming is a yearly event. They do it once a year, but they probably only advertise it maybe for 2 or 3 months in reality on the top of their page. So they get the aside just like they want it. And then when homecoming is over and they're ready to remove the content, they can actually just drag it down here to disabled items, and it saves it along with your content, but it won't display it. So it won't be seen on the front end, but then you can just as easily drag it into place where you want it next year when you're trying to advertise homecoming. So that's very nice. And you'll see that these dialog windows, once you get in them, are very similar to the ones that you saw on Drupal 7. So you'll interact with the media library, and it's going to be very similar to or almost exactly like it is in D7, but it just takes a little bit more to get there. And I'll show you how to do that. And again, once you've been in here just for a few hours or a few days, it's going to be like, like you were never in D7. So I don't want to save these changes. So I'm hoping that by backing out, the page is like it is. So what I want to do is kind of build, we're not going to build out the whole page because that would probably take the rest of our time, but we're going to build out some of these items so you can kind of see what it's like. Now, this is probably not the most representative way to talk about what you're going to do because you're going to go into the pages that you already own, and you're going to go in and you're going to just be editing them from scratch. But the process is exactly the same. So whether you're adding something, let's say I wanted to add a text region here, I would just click edit and I would click the plus underneath this and I would add my content that way. But I'm going to show you how to do it from scratch, and hopefully this will get you over the hump of what it's like to do that. And again, the process will be exactly the same, whether it's a page you're editing or a page you're building from scratch. So let's see what that's like. I'm going to build a new page and I'm just going to add page. So this is what a new page looks like in Drupal 8. Very different from the way it is in Drupal 7 because there's just nothing here, right? So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to give, and you can see I've done this training many times. I've got all my content in there already. We're going to call this alumni test. If you do nothing else, you have to give your page a title. So anytime you see that red asterisk, you'll know that this is required. I won't even be able to save this without giving it a title. Now, again, this page doesn't have a hero image, but I kind of want to show you the media library and show you what it's like. So I'm going to go ahead and add a hero just for the purposes of discussion. So I go to images and attachments, and when I click add media, anytime you see this button, you're going to be taken to the media library, or as I call it, the media browser. I think that's what it was called in D7. So I've got 2 options here. I can scroll down and find the image that I want to use if I'm able to do that, if it's already in my library. I can search. So let's say, for example, I bet there's probably an image or 2 that have main in them. So if I type main, I'm going to see all the images that have that in the title. There have to be more than that, but that's in page 1. Or I can actually add it from my computer. So if you want to do that, you have a 56 megabyte limit. So you've got lots of room. So let's choose a file here from my computer. I'm going to choose one that I already know is there called Billboard. I know this is not a picture of alumni probably, but we're just going to use it for testing purposes. Click open. Now it loads into the system, and this is actually a two-step process in D7. So congratulations, you have one less step. It will upload automatically when you select it. Every image has to have alt text. So even though the examples I'm going to be giving you are accurate in the sense that they sort of describe the image, there's actually a I don't know if I want to call it a creative process, but there is a way to describe alt. Alt text is meant to describe the image. So this is for people who use screen readers, who maybe have a sight disability, for the blind or something like that. Instead of seeing the image, which they cannot see, basically the alt text reads what the image is, and it should be descriptive of the image. So I say event on campus, that's not a great alt tag. You know, it might be students watching a concert from the lawn or something like that. That's kind of the alt text you'd want to use, but anything in this space will get you past that hump. So I'm going to save and insert, and there's my hero. That's all I had to do. If I want to get rid of it, I just click X. If I want to edit it, I can actually go in and edit it. And so you won't actually be able to edit it like Photoshop online. The one thing you might change is, so you'll notice this is a full size image and it's not cropped to that kind of letterbox that you see on the homepage. If you see it and like people's heads are cut off or something like that, you can actually change the focal point. This little crosshair right here, let's say you wanted to make it a little bit lower. So you're sure that that's now the center of the image, and you're going to bring that crop down more like this. We actually had one that kind of showed you what the crop would look like, and we removed it. So most people, you know, it's trial and error anyway. So, but just know that you can actually do that, and then you need to resave it if you were going to change the focal point on the image. So we'll back out of that. So now that we've added our hero image, we have to put some content on the page. So we have no content. So we're going to have to start from scratch. So the first thing you got to do here is click your plus button and say, I want a section. And this section, I know I want to make full width, and I'm going to save. So now I have my section or my container, and I have to put something on the inside. So that's what the inner plus is. So I click plus, and in this case, I know I want to create an aside. So I'm going to go back to my page, and I'm going to copy the title, and I know I want it to be full width, so I'm going to highlight that. Oops. I copy my text and put it there. Now this one takes advantage of all of the properties on the side. So I know this one has a video URL, right? This is a YouTube video. So I'm going to go and grab my code from YouTube. For some reason, the aside doesn't show you the live video. I think it's probably because YouTube has all the branding around it, right? So I actually, in this case, I have to add, in order to get to show up at all, I have to basically add a screen grab of the first image. So that's this. So I'm going to put that there. And that's Amy Weck. I'm going to save and insert it. Save one more time. And now I've created my aside. So just for fun, let's go ahead and go now. And we're going to go look at this page, but I do want to talk about moderation for a second. So with a new page, you have to make that first choice, right? Do I want this to be a draft or do I want it to be published? So one unfortunate thing about Drupal 8 is that in Drupal 7, drafts kind of had a colored background behind them. So it was visually obvious when you went to the page, whether there was a living draft or whether there wasn't. Sadly, Drupal 8 does not have that. I don't know, we might add it. I'm not sure what the deal is, but it will be obvious basically on the controls on the top of the content, whether it's a live page or whether it's a draft page. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it in draft. Now, if it was already published and I was creating a new draft, then I would basically, it would already be set to published at the bottom. And then I would be given an option to save a new draft or just to go ahead and republish it. So here's my alumni test page. There's my title. There's that great hero image that I selected. I didn't change the focal point because everyone's heads were well within the confines of the image. And then there's my aside. So that's all I had to do to create that aside. It's already there and ready to go. So let's see how we add some of those other things, right? So we have, now one sort of tip here is that as you're building these blocks on top of one another, if the thing you're building below, the thing that's above it is the same, so it's another full width section, I don't have to add a new section because they're the same. So I can just click the inner plus and go ahead and add my second item. Now, if I were adding 3 columns, yes, I would have to go ahead and create my section first. But otherwise, you can just go ahead and add the content that you want to add. So we remember that this was another aside that doesn't have any image. So this will be really easy to create. There's a title, there's full width. I don't even necessarily need to grab all this copy. I'm just going to grab half of it. And then just go down here and save again. If I had a video, if I had an image, I could go ahead and add those there, and those would be ready for me. Now here's where things get super fun. So because this is an aside, I can't add my heading to the bottom of the aside. That would be great, but then they would have that brown background. So this is where, again, the word cumbersome comes to mind. What do I have to do? I don't have to create a new section because it's the same, but I do have to create a text box because I don't want it to have that colored background. So I click text, I get my simple text box and I click save. One thing I didn't mention about the content editor, but you probably noticed as I was copying and pasting, is that unlike D7 and D8, you can actually copy things from Word, from other web pages, from wherever, and it generally, I won't promise 100% of the time, but 99% of the time, all the formatting carries over. So if that document had hyperlinks, if it has headings, those should all carry over without any problem. So know that Drupal 8, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry basically about duplicating the work. I know lots of people like to work in Word or Google Docs or something like that. You're not going to have to redo all of your links or anything like that. It'll all be there for you. So I created my single content region just for text. Totally annoying, but it had to be done so I could get my heading there. And then there's 3 columns, right? So this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. And so you'll do this one time and you'll be like, gosh, but once you have it there, you'll be able to edit it like you want and you'll be very happy, trust me. So let's go ahead and create that section for 3 columns. And I know I want them all to be the same, so I'm going to select those and then save. And now I'll see my 3 regions, right? There's my container and there's the 3 regions, each with a plus symbol. So I go in here and I say I want an image because that's the first thing. I'm going to get it from my media library, but it's not in my media library, so I'm going to have to upload it. So let's find one of those images. Again, a terrible alt text. Do not follow this example. Just trying to get through the training here. If you wanted that image to actually link to something, so this image is about affinity groups, that part of that column is about affinity groups at St. Edward's, and say there was a page within Student Life that had a listing of all the affinity groups, you just pop that URL in here and that image will actually take you to whatever, URL you're going to. There is an option down here. I basically have glossed over these. Do not worry about CSS classes, but view mode is a way to resize your images through Drupal without having any photo editing software or something like that. And this number represents the horizontal width of the photo. You do not have to do that for items in containers because they're basically responsive. So whether you're on, an Android phone or whether you're on a desktop with, 4,000 pixels of width, over the course of your monitor, it's going to size properly and it can't get any bigger than the content region it's given. So you never have to worry about resizing. If you're in columns, you're golden. You don't have to worry. And in fact, even if it's a full size, it can't go outside of the boundaries of that container itself. So don't worry about view mode either. We have to save that. So there's my image. And I just do that 2 more times. Again, just basically adding whatever content I want to go in there. And in this case, we're doing images. A few more having to click saves, and I'm sorry about that. You're going to be like, how many times do I have to save this darn thing? All righty, so we've got our 3 images. So again, if we were working in D7, we would just put our cursor here, we click return, and we would type our little stuff, right? Well, we can't do that in Drupal 8. So the next thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to add a text region. And I do that by going down here. And for the purposes of this, we'll just take this and use it 3 times. Much more painful to build than it is to edit. Trust me, you know, if you just have to add, you know, your 3 columns to your existing page, you're not going to have any problem with it. So I'm taking you through the worst of it. So let's go ahead and save our draft and make sure that we did good. There's my hero image. There's my first aside. There's my second aside. There's my heading in its own content region. And then there's my 3 columns, all looking like they should. So the others, I mean, the 2 columns would be exactly the same, except instead of choosing 3 equal columns, we would choose 2, and it's the same process. Here's 3 equal columns, but they're just text. And we already looked at aside. So what's some of the other things that you might need to add? Well, we looked at, this is a very popular thing on a lot of our pages, are accordions, right? Because it allows you to, you don't have to go out and create a new page for some of these things. This could actually be 4 different pages, but instead we're condensing that and putting it on one page. So what's it like to add an accordion? Well, if I add it to this page, I am going to have to, sadly, if I'm going to do here at the bottom, I am going to have to add a new container because it's not going to be in sections of 3 anymore. So I'm going to have to go back to create a full width section. And then I click plus, and I find accordion up here, and I add it. So this dialog window is not as friendly as the other ones, but again, once you're in here a couple times, you're going to totally get used to it. So let's grab this text. So the first thing, my accordion has to have a title. This is where you would add your content. 99% of the time, it's going to be just text. So you're going to add text, but it could be one of those other things like image or video if you wanted it to be. You just wanted a video inside of the accordion. You would do that here. And then you just go down, and this is the same as it is in D7. You just add accordion element each time you want to create a new thing. And we'll just build 2 of them. So we'll call regional networks, and then add text. And we'll save it. So on the back end, it doesn't look like an accordion, sorry, but you will be able to see that all your content is in here. You have to ignore some of these weird words like sub-elements, and again, things that make probably a lot of sense to people who develop in Drupal, but not so much to just regular users. So you just kind of ignore that, knowing that your content is in there, and you can always go back in and edit it or rearrange it or whatever you would need to do after the fact by going and clicking your little pencil. And when you do, you'll see all the stuff that you created. So tabs are very similar. Again, because tabs are also full width in this instance, we don't have to worry about adding a new section. I could just go in here and say, I want a set of tabs. And the tabs dialog window is even less friendly than the accordion window. So you just kind of have to look past some of the weirdness, and we'll just use this content for the tabs. So first you give it a title, and then you're like, well, where does my stuff go? I don't even have that great list of buttons down here. But you have add subwrapper. Don't even ask me about adding subwrapper. I don't know why this is there. I've asked our engineering team to clean this up. You shouldn't have to do that. You should just be able to add text, but you know, I think they're testing your ability to be patient. And we'll go grab that text there. Oops. I'm surprised the picture actually added itself. I'm not sure if that's gonna stay there. And then just like we added accordion element, we're gonna add tab element. Oh, I see. Selected too much. So give it a title, click add subwrapper and add text. Again, if these tabs are already on your page, you're not gonna have to do this. So consider yourself lucky. You'll just have to go in and edit. And then we save it. And again, this basically looks like it does up there. Oh, image is gone, so that's fine. So let's save it and see what's what. What do we do? There's my 3 columns, and hey, there's my accordion. I didn't set it to keep that first one closed, so they're there. And then there's my tabs. You didn't really have to do too much to get those things on the page. And the image did not carry over, so sadly, that didn't work. Okay, so what are some of these other things that we can do? So let's go back here and look at some of the other options we have. So I click that enter plus. I do have the ability to add a section, so that gives you the opportunity to add a new section if you just click the wrong plus. So you can add a section from either one. We talked about accordions. We talked about asides. So block quotes, I think this was actually just a button in the WYSIWYG in D7, right? So block quotes and pull quotes are almost identical, except one has a little bit larger text than the other one. So instead of having a button, if you had a block quote, and typically block quotes, I think pull quotes typically kind of are off to the side, usually in a sidebar, whereas a block quote might be within the flow of the text, something like that. Those are the technical definitions of them, but probably the reason you would choose one or the other is because you wanted bigger text or you wanted smaller text. So instead of being normal text, it would have like a little vertical line to the side and then a serif font from our brand that you could use. So the quote is, John is such a great trainer. Jobs. There's my author. Your block quote may or may not have an author, so you can add that and it will format it properly or not. You don't have to put something there that's not required. So that's a block quote. What about a pull quote? Give that an attribution and save it. And we'll look at and see what these look like in a few minutes. So what else could we do? So we have block quote. So CTA, these are those great little, I mean, basically a CTA is just a fancy link, right? There's a link behind it that's designed to get you to click through to do something. Apply now, come for a visit, you know, sign up here, something like that. So you can actually do it the way you did it in D7. So you can highlight your link in the WYSIWYG and then use a pull down to select which CTA you want, or you can do it like this. You can just say, I want a CTA here. Then you don't have to do anything else. Basically, a CTA link just has a URL and then what you want the text to say. So we'll also see what that looks like when we publish it. Column section, I think the engineering team is removing this. This is kind of a leftover legacy when we didn't have the layout that I've been showing you now for the last 51 minutes or 45 minutes. So I don't think this will be here for very much longer. Don't have to worry about column section. Actually, if you click it, you'll be like, oh no, John, I don't even want to try this. You would basically say, in the first column, I want text. And the second column, I want a tabs. And then I want a video. So it's cumbersome. So this is, again, kind of left over from a version of Drupal that we were kind of developing early in the summer. So you probably won't see the column section. So gallery. Galleries, again, was something that you would create in one place on D7, and then you would use a token to put it on your page. You no longer have to do that. You just say, I want a gallery here. And you start with your first gallery image, and it can have a heading and a caption if you want to. And you can basically interact with the image media library just like you did before. So you can either add it from your computer or you can find it in your existing library. So let's just do it with some existing photos. I just select the one I want and insert it. And then I go down and I add my second one. Insert. Add another gallery image. Click add again, and I'll insert that. So that's going to be my gallery. Save it. Done. You're done with your gallery. That's all you have to do. We'll look at it in a few minutes. So we talked about image. So image is the same. Again, media library, URL if you want to use it. Ignore these things. They're pointless. Localist widget. So I think we did an inventory and there are only like 12 localist widgets on the site. So there aren't a whole lot of them. And I'm not positive that like regular everyday localist users can actually export the widget code. Typically they're associated with a channel or with, you basically build it based on events that are like. So if you're part of a department or office that puts on events and you put your stuff on localist and you actually want that stuff to flow directly into your website, we have all the CSS or the styles that will make it look good. Some people are just like, we'd rather people just go to the channel, our channel, you know, the homecoming channel on localist and see all of our events that way. Like the localist widget will only show so many events. And, you know, again, if it's like homecoming weekend, you've got 50 events. And so you want to be able to highlight all those. So that's kind of a personal choice. And again, if you click it, all it does is it gives you a field to put in your localist widget. And again, it's just code. And I'm not positive you could export it. So if you ever want to add one of these to your page, probably just ping me, send me an email over support@stedwards.edu to say we want to add one to our page. I'll build it, I'll add it, and you'll be good to go. So just know, but that's there for you. Parallax image, this is another thing our engineering team is going to pull out. The only place I know it's used on our site is the front page, the home page, and it's not, it doesn't actually use this function to do it. It's programmed separately. So ignore parallax image. They don't get used. And again, I think they're pulling it out. So we talked about pull quote. Social media grid is actually kind of cool. So you'll know if you manage any landing pages. So for example, alumni, when we looked earlier up here, oops, I can't do it because this is the alumni test page, but the home page actually had the contact information and it had all the social media blanks there where you'd fill it out, but they just appear as text links and they're kind of boring in your sidebar. So if you had another place that you wanted to put social media links where it actually uses the icons associated with those, the social media grid is where you'd want to go. It's really cool. And you just click it here. You can have a title and some text above it if you want to. But I'll go because this doesn't really understand the difference between these things. They're just fields. So I'm just going to put one in every field and you can see what it looks like. So you got Facebook, you got Twitter, you got Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, YouTube, all the greats. So I just programmed my social media widget. We'll see what that looks like in a minute, or grid, sorry. Statistics, this is also going to be pulled out. This is legacy from D7. We don't know why it was developed. We don't know anybody who uses it. It's meant to display statistics packages. I know we have other software on campus that will do things like that. So don't worry about it. That's not going to be there for long. Tabs we talked about. Text we talked about. Text with image is something you might or might not use. It was developed for the newsroom. And so if you had a page where you featured things like news, where, you know, if you go to name a news site, you know, Google News, CNN, you'll see a square thumbnail, a title, a short summary, and both the title and the image link to the news story that you click through to read. So that's essentially what it is. So if you have a place where you want to, that kind of like a predefined layout like that, you can do it. We use this a lot also with maybe listings of faculty where there's like a faculty portrait, and then maybe kind of their name and their title and their specialties, and then maybe a third column has their availability for media, things like that. So that's essentially what this was designed to do. It has a title, it has a link URL. So again, this was built for our news center. So they're typically highlighting stories like in local and national media where they talk about St. Edward's. So for example, if it's a KXAN story about Healthy Hilltop initiatives, we would just link to the KXAN story here, or it could actually link to our own website. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to check your URL. It doesn't have to be external. And then here is basically where you would tell it exactly what you wanted it to look like. Do I want it to be 2 columns with a header? Do I want it to be 3 columns? Something like that. And then that will divide all of these little content items, your image and your content, into those columns. And it's kind of a process of elimination. My guess is most people are not going to use this, but if you manage pages, you may come across this when you go into edit. So you may see this. Again, I've seen it on some academic pages where we're laying out, particularly with when you're laying out a number of faculty members and kind of trying to provide some real basic information about each one of those people. So you'll see that. But I don't expect it's going to get used much outside the newsroom. So let's save this again and see what we did of all those new things that I added. So there's all the great content we made before. There's my accordions and tabs. So here's I believe this was the block quote. And then here's my pull quote. So you can kind of see what those look like. There's my call to action button, where I just had to basically tell it what I wanted the link to say and what the link was. Here's my gallery. So this is going to be one of these challenges, and we're actually going to try to come up with some guidance for you. These images are starting to get a little pixelated, and it's probably because they started out much smaller, and the gallery itself has a defined space that it fits into on full width, obviously. And so this is one of those cases where higher quality images would make this gallery look a lot better, or cropping the images, right? So her face, the top of her head is not cut off. And so again, those are the things you can do by going in and clicking edit on the image and changing the focal point, or by starting out with images that were cropped correctly to begin with. I just picked the first 3 images in my media library, and this is what I ended up with. But it was more my intent just to show you how the gallery worked. So you definitely want to start with high quality images, and that are the center of the image is in a place where people's heads don't get cropped off. And then here's my social media icons down here. And so this does look a little bit nicer than it does in the sidebar. And frankly, kind of I wish this was the way it looked in the sidebar. So maybe we'll make a project out of that. So that covers the basics. We do have about 15 minutes, and I'm happy to field any questions, or if you feel like I went too fast, or if you want to ask specific questions about content that you own, whatever, just let me know. This is time for you if I have not covered something in enough detail for you. Anyone? No. Okay, you have a chance to change your mind while I'm talking. You just shout it out loud. Like I said, I am going to provide an email to you, hopefully later this afternoon, with some helpful resources for you. But this is one URL which I would highly recommend that you bookmark or just commit to memory. The site help section has been completely redone from Drupal 7. My predecessor, Lindsay, was very detail oriented and did a great job building it out the first time. Unfortunately, everything changed from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. So I had to redo this whole thing, and I have done it. And one of the things that I really wanted to add, because I'm the kind of person who loves to do like home repairs and stuff like that and not hire someone. So like, for example, in my son's shower, I had to replace a cartridge so that water would not, or that I could like turn the spigot or whatever. And so I watched a YouTube video. It was like 3 minutes long and it showed me how to do the same thing. So all of these tasks have almost all of them are less than 60 seconds long or less. So if you go to this page and you're like, oh gosh, I just can't remember how to do that. These are all of the things that we covered today. And you just watch the video. It's a minute. I realize a minute with me could be very painful now that you already spent 60 minutes with me. But this will get you really quickly to where you need to go. How do I do this one thing? So there's a little paragraph or a couple of paragraphs on the side of each of these that explain what these things are intended to do and to give you some quick tips. There are written out steps, and my intention is to include some screenshots with these, but honestly, the videos are better. People are telling me they're better, and I'm not just tooting my own horn. I'm not that good at this, but they do work to kind of get you where you need to go based on all the things that we've talked about. So when you get to the stage where you need to add an image and you can't quite remember how to do it, you can just go here and watch a video that's a minute long and it'll show you how to do that. I also created a slightly more comprehensive video that's basic page editing. So going into a page and how do I kind of do several different things. How do you do drafts and publish, which again, all of you will be able to do now without having to ask somebody else to do it. And then it's not actually linked from the site help page, but there is a full length training that I recorded. And so it's an hour long. So if you have colleagues who have missed one of these trainings or actually want to sit down for an hour and learn it all at once, that video will also be included in the email that I'm going to send you. And I'll link it to this page just because I haven't done that already. And there is actually, so if you see over here on this aside, it says read more about training opportunities. This has links to the ones that I'm going to do. I feel like I'm probably not going to do any more general trainings that I schedule at a specific time. I think what I'm going to do is to do, again, sort of regular office hours where people can come and either get a training or to have me answer specific questions. I'm also planning to use Calendly, maybe, so people can actually book time directly with me to do that on their own time or time that we can agree to. So that will also be a possibility. Or you can just email me. You can just say, John, can we schedule a meeting? I don't look at this like a support issue. So if you want to meet, I'll tell you the ways that you can do that in that email. But you can also just contact me. This is just a meeting, and I would schedule those meetings with anybody at any time anyway. So you don't have to worry about contacting me through the ticketing system. I consider support at stedwards.edu to be the way to get me to fix problems on your site. If you want to meet, let's just schedule meetings the way you schedule meetings with anybody else on campus. So that should not be a burden to you to have to worry about sending a ticket into the system and waiting for me to get back to you. So this is there. And again, there's training videos and lots of real world examples. There's also a website toolkit. This has not changed a lot since Drupal 7 because it's not CMS specific. Talk a lot about accessibility guidelines, which is incredibly important. As well as the tool that we use, Site Improve, that Matt Myers in my office, our analytics guy, works on, and it will identify bad links on your site and all kinds of other things that make sites more accessible. And so that's very, very important to us. But there are also several sections in here on site structure, navigation, visual design, and writing for the web. And so all that stuff is available to you whenever you need it. So having said all that, last chance, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to field them here in the next few minutes. And if not, I'll give you a few minutes back.